One of the most famous cases solved by Sherlock Holmes was the Hound of the Baskervilles. It was a mysterious and chilling case that took place in the desolate moors of Dartmoor in England. The story begins when Holmes is contacted by a physician named Dr. James Mortimer, who is seeking his help in investigating the death of his friend Sir Charles Baskerville. Sir Charles was a wealthy landowner who had died under mysterious circumstances, and Mortimer feared that he had been the victim of a curse that had haunted the Baskerville family for generations. Holmes and his loyal companion, Dr. John Watson, traveled to the Baskerville estate to investigate the case. They learned that Sir Charles had been terrified by reports of a giant, supernatural hound that had been seen roaming the moors at night, and that he may have died of fright after encountering the creature. As Holmes and Watson delve deeper into the case, they uncover a complex web of deceit and betrayal. They discover that Sir Charles had been murdered by his own nephew, Henry Baskerville, who had hatched a plot to inherit his uncle's fortune. Henry had used the legend of the hound to scare Sir Charles to death, and had even attempted to kill him with a poisoned dart. With the help of Watson and the local police, Holmes is able to apprehend Henry and bring him to justice. The case is a triumph for Holmes, who is able to solve the mystery and prevent any further harm to the Baskerville family. The Hound of the Baskervilles is one of the most iconic cases in the Sherlock Holmes canon, and it showcases Holmes' exceptional detective skills and attention to detail. The case has remained popular among fans of crime fiction and has inspired numerous adaptations in film, television, and literature. One of the most astonishing cases solved by Sherlock Holmes was The Adventure of the Speckled Band. It was a perplexing and eerie case that took place in the countryside of England. The story begins when a young woman named Helen Stoner arrives at Holmes' doorstep, seeking his help in investigating the death of her twin sister, Julia. Julia had died under mysterious circumstances, and Helen feared that she too would meet the same fate. Holmes agrees to take on the case and travels to the estate where the sisters had lived with their stepfather, Dr. Grimesby Roylott. Holmes discovers that Julia had died of an apparent heart attack, but that Helen had heard strange noises in the night before her death. As Holmes investigates the case, he discovers that Dr. Roylott had a history of violence and had threatened both Julia and Helen. He also learns that the sisters were set to inherit a large sum of money upon their marriages, and that Dr. Roylott stood to lose the money if they did. Holmes deduces that Dr. Roylott had trained a deadly swamp adder to attack his stepdaughters in their bedrooms, using a ventilator shaft to direct the snake into their rooms. Holmes is able to catch the adder and prevent any further harm to Helen. With his keen observation and deduction skills, Holmes is able to solve the case and bring Dr. Roylott to justice. The case is a remarkable example of Holmes' ability to connect seemingly disparate clues and uncover the truth behind a complex crime. The Adventure of the Speckled Band remains one of the most celebrated cases in the Sherlock Holmes canon, and it has inspired countless adaptations in film, television, and literature. One of the trickiest cases solved by Sherlock Holmes was The Adventure of the Red-Headed League. It was a perplexing and humorous case that took place in the heart of London. The story begins when a red-headed man named Jabez Wilson arrives at Holmes' doorstep, seeking his help in investigating a strange job offer. Wilson had been hired by the Red-Headed League, a mysterious organization that paid him handsomely to copy out an encyclopedia in a small office for several hours each day. Holmes is immediately suspicious of the organization and takes on the case. He discovers that the League was a front for a criminal plot, designed to keep Wilson occupied and out of his pawnshop for several hours each day. As Holmes investigates the case, he uncovers a web of deceit and trickery. He learns that the mastermind behind the plot was a criminal named John Clay, who had used the League as a cover for a bank robbery that he was planning. Holmes is able to outwit Clay and prevent the robbery from taking place, using his exceptional skills in observation and deduction to stay one step ahead of the criminal. He ultimately solves the case and brings Clay to justice. The Adventure of the Red-Headed League is a classic example of a tricky case, where the criminal uses misdirection and deception to cover their tracks. It showcases Holmes' ability to see through the lies and uncover the truth, even in the face of complex and confusing circumstances. The case has remained a favorite among fans of crime fiction and has inspired numerous adaptations in film, television, and literature.